Rock is great because he can make you everything from basic League Start gear to some of the best weapons in Path of Exile. And in Rayclast, knowledge is power. Or, at the very least, knowledge makes you powerful. Understanding how Rog works, and how to leverage his unique form of crafting, will definitely help you make early League money or fill in certain tricky gear upgrades. And today, I'm going to go over the basics of how Rog works, helping you select the base to roll, what his unique crafting mechanics do, and how that all comes together to make items that you want to use or sell for profit. Now, after you finish this video, if you want more Rog content, maybe a live demonstration, I recently did a stream where I went over how to craft with Rog, so be sure to check that out after you finish the video for even more information. But for now, let's get into it, starting with how do you pick a base? First off, higher level bases are more valuable than lower level ones. Something like Titan gauntlets that require level 69 are more valuable than ancient gauntlets. Places like PoEDB and the community wiki can help in this regard. This is especially important where the base stats of the item matter, so armor on an armor shield, weapon damage on a weapon, or evasion, energy shield, or armor on a piece that wants to stack those stats. Rarer bases also have higher demand and thus are more valuable. There's more players who want to wear an amethyst ring than a power ring, because less people need mana and more people need to fix their chaos resistance. Which brings up another very good point. Supply and demand is a factor. If a lot of players are using spell suppression, then evasion bases are more valuable and you should try to roll them. On the other hand, if it's bow league, then bow builds are going to be popular, so you should start rolling some quivers. Furthermore, item level matters. Higher is generally better, and in certain cases item level 85 or 86 unlocks special modifiers that can't roll at lower levels. For example, to get T1 spell suppression, you need item level 85 bases. And if you want plus 2 arrows, 35% move speed, or plus 2 minion gem levels, then you better get some 86 gear out, be it a bow, helmet, or pair of boots. And then finally, the stats on the item should also be considered. If half the work's done, it's a lot easier to finish an item from there than if you're starting from scratch and kinda just chaos spamming. For example, flask mods on belt are notoriously difficult to roll, but in very high demand, especially for Pathfinder builds. So, in this case, a well-rolled belt is a far better starting point than just hoping I get something good, even if you generally don't want a heavy belt unless you're a strength stacker. But now that you've selected a base, how do you go about crafting it? The first step is understanding what Rog offers you and how you can use that to manipulate item affixes. So, for example, he can offer to add an affix. This could be a prefix, a suffix, or filling all empty slots. But he'll only do this if an item has open affixes. So if you want to force him to give you other choices, fill those slots up as quickly as possible. He may also offer to reroll prefixes or suffixes, potentially multiple times, for better results. So for example, if you have 3 prefixes and he rerolls them 10 times, he'll generate 10 new sets of prefixes and pick the best one. The term best is a little nebulous here, but it seems to be some sort of weighting based on item affixes, with higher being better. So in general, it is pretty good, though certain things can fall through the cracks, where highly desirable mods like +1 gems don't show up all too often. As a result of this, it's often advantageous to have full prefixes, suffixes, or potentially a full item in general when you want to reroll a lot. That said, do keep in mind if you need minus mana on your ring, you're going to have to leave a prefix open and deal with all the downsides that come from that. Rog will also offer to upgrade one or more existing modifiers, and this option is incredibly powerful because it ignores the rarity or weighting associated with higher tier mods. So for example, if you have +1 arrow on your item level 86 bow, and you hit upgrade on it, then it'll become +2 despite that being one of the rarest mods in the game. So when upgrading gear, or crafting things to sell, be sure to use this to your advantage. Try to hit those rare mods, or at least a lower tier version, then upgrade later. Rog can also offer to remove a modifier from an item, be it all the prefixes, all the suffixes, or a number of modifiers based on the lowest level requirement. This can be really good for freeing up an affix slot for a crafted mod and getting rid of junk, but it can also be dangerous. For example, +1 to spell skill gems is a pretty low level requirement at 50 and could easily be removed by accident. So always double check to see what's highlighted in orange before removing mods from your item. Then finally, Rog has a few options which are pretty niche or not very useful, Things like divining an item can sometimes increase the value in the case of a weapon, but isn't generally very useful. And things like anointing an amulet is very hit or miss. Adding an incubator probably doesn't add very much value. Influencing is good if you get it early and then hit an influence mod, but most of the time just bricks your experience because then you can't Eldritch craft it. And socketing and linking, while it may occasionally produce a 6-link, is generally a waste of your time. So a lot of these special options do kind of clutter things and make it a little harder to roll good stuff. So knowing all that, how do you go about crafting on ROG? First off, start from a good base, or items with good existing mods. For some items, you can focus heavily on the prefixes or suffixes alone. Say, if you have a good weapon with prefixes, it's easy to fix the suffixes later using Ashling or a Veiled Chaos. Just make sure you have that open suffix for metacrafting. Conversely, gloves with crafted life are totally fine, so work on the suffixes, get them as close to perfection as possible, and don't worry about the prefixes. You can always wipe them away with Eldritch crafting. Because ROG likes to fill affixes, it can also be advantageous to work with 6-mod items. This way, you remove one possibility from his crafting pool and get more of those juicy upgrades, or potentially rerolls, which are usually where the money comes from. This is especially true for chest pieces, gloves, boots, and helmets, where you can use Eldritch crafting. And finally, you don't have to always take the option that he gives you. Sometimes it's better to skip. Just be warned, if you skip, you cannot do so twice consecutively. This means you may get a worse option next time and be forced to take or brick your item. I often use ROG to craft for profit, or to make difficult upgrades for my build, perfect gloves, or god tier rings for example. Speaking of which, if you want to know more about my current build, a Righteous Fire Juggernaut, or how to craft upgrades for it, I'm going to be releasing videos on both of those topics soon. Be sure to get subscribed so that you don't miss out on them. Now in closing, here's a few tips that I've picked up by crafting with ROG a lot. First off, gloves are very easy to roll, especially if you just need spell suppression. Rings and jewels, or even quivers, also tend to be pretty easy. Weapons, on the other hand, are very difficult, but when you win big. Try every item level 86 base, because sure, you're going to brick 99 out of 100, but that 100th is probably going to sell for 100 divines. And while just as rare, you can also make incredibly godly melee weapons. For everything else, it depends on what's in demand. So maybe after this, check out my week 1 meta report to find out what sort of builds are popular and what items they might want to wear. I've also found that more affixes on your items are good, and don't call it quits too early. Sometimes you really should push it to the limit. After all, ROG currency is fairly cheap and pretty accessible, so you're not losing very much aside of your time. Make the snap decision, take the risk, and occasionally it'll be rewarded. Then finally, once you're done crafting with ROG, it can be daunting to price check everything. And so, I don't. I just throw it in a dump tab. Dump tabs are a series of tabs priced sequentially. Say 100, 80, 60, 40, and 20C. Put all your crafts in the 100C tab, anything that sells. Once the tab gets full, lower the price to 80, lower the price of all the lower tabs, vendor everything in the 20C tab, that's your new 100C tab. Repeat this process, whatever sells, and whatever doesn't. If someone whispers you immediately, you probably underpriced it, but aside of that, you should be pretty good to go. And so with that said, I hope you've enjoyed this look at ROG crafting. It's powerful enough to make some of the best items in the game, and accessible enough that anyone can do it, even someone who's in SSF. So next time you're looking for an upgrade, or you want to craft for profit, maybe just practice crafting, buy or find a few ROG logbooks, and get to it. With that said, what other crafting topics do you want to know about in Path of Exile? Maybe it's how to make a certain item, or how to use essences. I do have some other videos on the topic, which I'll put up in the card and down in the description, but if you ask a question, you might see it answered in a future video. And with that said, a special thanks to my patrons and channel members for the continued support. For as low as $1 a month, you can help make more videos just like this one possible. Link is down in the description. If you're looking for something else to watch, maybe check out my ROG crafting stream demonstration, that week 1 meta report, or some of my old crafting videos. Or you can always go to the video that's on screen right now. With that said, good luck in your crafting. I hope you learned something today. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again sometime soon.